Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, So Grow Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of So Grow Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Are you a nonprofit professional who's feeling overwhelmed and burnt out? Well, welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast. I am your host, Haley Cooper. On this podcast, we will share stories of leadership, courage, and empathy that'll help you learn to take care of yourself, your staff, organization, and community. You will hear from nonprofit leaders who have been in your shoes and have learned best practices to raise more revenue and make a greater impact. Let's thrive together. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. And I am so honored today to have Dr. Robyn Graham on the podcast. We are going to be talking about anxiety and leadership. And if you've seen on my LinkedIn or my Instagram or you're on my newsletter list, you know that anxiety is something that I have been dealing with personally at 8 months postpartum. So selfishly, I'm really excited to have this conversation and kind of pick Dr. Robyn's brain, but also provide you some insight into how you can navigate anxiety as a nonprofit leader. So welcome, Robyn.
Thanks, Haley. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Well, I would always love to ask this question. How did you get started? And what was there a personal experience that led you to what you do today?
Oh, that's such a great question. So I grew up in this tiny little town in the middle of the Midwest in Southern Illinois. And I wanted to have this high-powered career. I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to make an impact on the world. So I went to pharmacy school. I got a doctorate degree, and that's what I did for many years. I never worked traditional pharmacy. I was always more in a consulting role. And when my kids were growing up, my oldest was maybe 12. We started to see that he was experiencing some significant signs of anxiety. And because I had lived with anxiety my entire life, I thought, okay, no way, not on my watch. And my husband and I decided that we needed to slow our lives down. And with that, I decided to go from working in the corporate environment to becoming a professional photographer and following my passion and doing so that I could be more hands-on, not travel, and be more present with my kids. Not that I wasn't present before, but the reality is when we work in that environment where we have demands and we have to travel and all of these things, and my husband was traveling globally and we didn't have family to support us here, it was a lot. And we decided that to decrease that level of anxiety in our home, I would follow my passion. I did headshots and branding photography. So while I was working with people who were corporate leaders, they would say, gosh, this is amazing. Have you done this your whole life? And I'd say, no, I have this doctorate degree and this is my passion. And I decided to make my passion a career. They were amazed by that I took that gutsy move to give up a really good career to do this. And when I was working with branding clients, I discovered that so many people were starting businesses, but they didn't know how to build a foundation for their business. They didn't know how to use the images I was creating for their benefit to grow their businesses. And I started really studying personal branding and I became a certified brand strategist. And from there, I started consulting and coaching and mentoring business owners to build a solid foundation for sustainable success and to be able to do so without having to be on social media 24/7. So that's my focus today. So I've had a windy road, but ultimately I've been an entrepreneur for 23 plus years. And I am on the board of directors for a nonprofit called Face to Face in Germantown, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. It's like the northwest part of Philadelphia. And we serve the marginalized and impoverished community. And we have so many incredible benefits. We're not a shelter, and we're not a soup kitchen. We offer 2 organically home cooked meals a day where we serve our guests. They don't stand in line. We don't just slap food on a plate. We actually serve them on trays, and they sit at a community table and they share their stories and their life. And we treat them with the same dignity and respect that we want for ourselves. And we have attorneys, we have social workers, we have a nurse, we have doctors, we have psychologists, we have behavioral health specialists, and we serve them in that way to help create transformation and hopefully someday have an impact on ending poverty.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I love that you center respect and dignity and community where when serving the people that are in your mission. I think that is so important and should be the center at any mission. And thank you so much for sharing your story of entrepreneurship. And you're so strong and courageous for taking that leap of faith and jumping out and following your passion. And I know you are also the author of a book, You, Me, and Anxiety, Taking Action Over Anxiety to Enjoy Being You. We're going to talk a little bit more about anxiety. And I would love to know, before we were on recording, we talked about how there are, at least in my brain, different types of anxiety. There's the neurological, mental anxiety, but there's also this anxiety and fear of not being in control. And I don't know if they're the same. So how do you define anxiety?
That's a good question. So the way I look at anxiety is it's really this almost unexplainable fear or apprehension of something. Maybe it's an interaction, maybe it's an experience, maybe it's another person, but it's something that prevents you from doing what you want to do, what you love, because you are stuck with this unbalanced level of fear and apprehension, if that makes sense. So it's beyond worry, it's beyond nervousness. Worry, I feel, is something more that we have a choice, we can control it. We can choose to worry about our children. We could choose to worry about tomorrow. But at the end of the day, we can make the choice to say, okay, I'm not going to worry about that because it's out of my control. Nervousness is, I like to use the example of a speaking engagement. Maybe you're really nervous to get up in front of someone, an organization, or a large group of people and speak. And you feel this strange feeling in your gut. Maybe your hands or palms are sweaty. Maybe you just have a headache or didn't sleep well the night before. But the second you step on that stage, you give the speech and you finish it and you have an applause, all of that nervousness dissipates. It goes away. And you can go forward with your day or your evening. With anxiety, that doesn't abate. You still have these what if thoughts circling in your mind. What if I said the wrong thing? What if they didn't like it? What if they didn't think I was dressed appropriately? What if nobody reaches out to me to connect with me after the fact? But your brain just constantly goes to these what ifs. And that is kind of anxiety in a nutshell, where your brain is thinking, what if this doesn't work? What if this goes wrong? What if this isn't perfect? And anxiety has multiple facets. There are environmental factors. There's epigenetics, meaning what your grandmother experienced when she was pregnant can ultimately affect how your brain works today and how you see the world today. We all have these neural pathways in our brain, and when we think of it genetically like that, there can be dysfunctions. But then there are also things like social anxiety or generalized anxiety, so different levels of anxiety with the situations that stimulate anxiety in our brain. Because we have this fear that anxiety has triggered in us, we often think we need to be perfect. And so a lot of people who have anxiety are type A, or they're perfectionist, or they think they want to control. Well, what I've learned is that when we are trying to control or trying to be perfect, that is fear driving that. But when we can change those neural pathways in our brain, we can decrease the anxiety. But how to do that is ultimately to take action. And that action begins with capturing, or when those thoughts are coming in, challenging them. Are they realistic? Would someone that you know, love, and respect be thinking the same thing you're thinking, as whether about yourself or about a situation or something else? Would they be thinking the same thing you're thinking? And chances are they wouldn't. Then changing those thoughts. And the more we do this practice, the more control we'll have over our thoughts to be able to catch them when they're negative or they're what if. And then the more confidence we'll have to be able to step into what our calling is or what our purpose is, or even doing things that are outside the box with our family.
Yes, it's my brain, because all the what ifs literally cycle my brain all the time. And I'm a recovering control freak and perfectionist. We're just going to lay it out there, be real on this podcast. And I have had to work really hard over the last 2 years. I think one, getting married, anxiety, or like the things that you had in your brain that you were like, oh, these are normal. The what ifs were comfortable to me. They protected me for so long. And I got married and then I had kids and I was like, wait, these thoughts aren't normal. Like, they're normal to me, but I need to challenge them and I need to change my neural pathways because I have to show up in a whole other way, not only in my entrepreneur leadership, but also for my husband and for my kids. And so over the last 2 years, I've been really working on changing my neural pathways. And one of the things that I would love to know from you is, like, I've heard like gratitude and anxiety can't coexist. Like, you have to choose one or the other. What are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't say they can't coexist. They absolutely can coexist. But I think gratitude can actually help heal anxiety or reduce anxiety, because gratitude is actually a natural antidepressant. What happens when we express gratitude or feel gratitude, we actually release positive endorphins in our body. So norepinephrine, dopamine, serotonin. So gratitude can help alleviate anxiety. And it really becomes about looking at a situation and making a choice to say, this could be a really bad situation, to finding the blessings and the things within the situation to be grateful for. I like to use this example. We all have those days where we wake up and we just feel a little grumpy, like we get out of bed on the wrong side of the bed, so to speak. And the day starts off iffy, not so great. And then you go to let the dog in and it's covered in mud. And your child is running late and you have to drop them off before you go to your meeting. And then you get in the car and you take a sip of the coffee that you desperately need and you spill it down the front of your shirt. And then you're in this long line of traffic. And then your kid is screaming at you because you're going to be late to drop them off at school. Never mind the fact that nobody cares you're going to be late for your meeting because all of this has happened, right? So you could choose to look at this day as, well, this stinks and my whole day is ruined now. I'm never going to get anything done and I'm going to feel miserable all day long. Or you can choose to look at it as, well, thank goodness we were running late because we could have been in the accident that was causing the traffic delay. Thank goodness I had 5 extra minutes to spend in the car with my child because these moments are fleeting. They're going to be gone before I know it. Thank goodness the top I'm wearing is black, so nobody's even going to know that I spilled coffee on it. So you can see how you can very quickly find a blessing in a negative situation. And the more we do that, the more we rewire our brain to see the blessings and the positive versus focusing on the what ifs. Well, what if that would have been me in the accident? No, thank God it wasn't me in the accident. So the more we do that, the less anxiety we have. But it doesn't mean that there's no anxiety. Because if you innately have anxiety, if there is a chemical abnormality in your brain, or if epigenetically you are just wired for anxiety, you're always going to have anxiety. But you have the choice to navigate it in a way that it's not suffocating you or not debilitating for you, or it's not going into major depressive episodes. Does that make sense?
Yes. And again, you were totally in my brain because I was stuck in traffic. I was late the other day and I was like, this day is just going to shit. Everything's going wrong. The universe is working against me. And then I was like, wait, no, I'm enjoying the music in my car. Everything will be fine the rest of the day. And like, I literally had an internal dialogue with myself to talk me out of that mindset of everything's just going to go wrong today. Today just sucks. So I
Yeah.
had to really
And it's
change,
important.
have that internal dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important to recognize that, because the way the brain works, what we believe in, whether that is through what we've been taught to believe, what we've experienced, past experiences, our faith, all these different things affect what we believe. But what we believe influences our thoughts, then influence our emotions and our feelings. And if our emotions and feelings are not positive because of our beliefs being negative or our thoughts being negative, then we're going to make choices and choose behaviors that are not going to be positive or help us. And therefore, our results and our outcomes are going to be negative. So it's really important to reframe these thoughts, these what if thoughts, to no, I believe that the impossible is possible. I believe that I have all the gifts and tools that I need to be able to do this. Or I believe that God's going to keep me safe, or whatever you can convert those what if thoughts to a positive to, the more likely you are to then reduce that anxiety level and be able to go forth about your life and your relationships in a more peaceful, purposeful way.
Yes, I love that. I love the reframing every situation. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are nonprofit leaders, and you mentioned that you serve on a nonprofit board. So I'm sure that you have experienced the stress and the anxiety that comes along with serving people who are experiencing the most challenging adversities that anyone should face. So it's natural to have these stresses and anxieties and worrying about, what if I don't show up? That person, that kid will still be living on the street or be in that abusive environment or still being sex traded. These are things that happen, but I think, and it can lead to burnout because we don't take time for ourselves. We don't address these anxieties internally because we do operate out of that fear of, what if I don't show up? What if this happens? What if that happens? And we go down that cycle of thinking. So why is it crucial for leaders to address and navigate through their own anxieties and their what ifs to better lead their organization? Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more.
That's a really powerful question, because if you're a leader and you are stuck in this negative mindset, you are going to affect and influence every single person on your team. And you are never going to be able to create positive results. If you are trying to control everyone else, they're going to have the impression that you don't trust them, that they aren't good enough. And anytime you have those thoughts in your team members, they're not going to produce the way they need to produce, the way you need them to produce to achieve the outcomes you need to achieve. And this can go along with the internal organization and the things that need to be done on a day-to-day basis, as well as the ability to bring in money. Because if the organization is dysfunctional, if the messaging isn't functioning the way it should function because there are these negative emotions tied to it, then it's not going to be effective for bringing in donations to be able to support the people that are on your team and then be able to get the work done to make the impact to serve the other populations that you're trying to serve.
Yeah, that's so good. And we talk a lot about that on this podcast, mostly in an emotional connection frame. Like, you said, if people don't feel like they're good enough, it's going to lead to emotional disconnection where people get stuck in a negative cycle of wanting to feel seen, valued, and heard. And so they reach for those ineffective coping strategies to feel that way. And it leads to less collaboration, less communication, less productivity because people feel like they're alone in their job and they don't understand how they're all working together and how their role is meaningful and valuable in carrying out the mission. And so bringing everyone back together to understand their fears, and I've seen this in my own boardrooms that I've done this training in, where there's conflict in the boardroom and they're not able to make those critical decisions that they need to move fundraising forward. And once we're able to hear other people's fears, they realize they're not alone in it. And they're able to be like, and it's like that click in the brain. You see it in their eyes where they're like, oh, you feel that too. I'm not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where positive psychology, positive intelligence really comes into play, because when you can identify your own saboteurs, per se, like where you're judging yourself, where you're judging others, and when you can catch those faster and let go of the control or let go of being a people pleaser, then you're going to be able to listen and hear people more readily and be more open to accepting other people's ideas. And it's really about, if you think about it and you can say, instead of saying, no, that idea won't work, because when we are people pleasers or when we are people who want to have control or want everything to be perfect, we tend to look at everything from that judgment perspective. And instead, if you can look at it as, oh, I like that idea, and instead of, no, that idea won't work, or I like that idea, but here's what's wrong with it. If you look at it from the perspective, and this is where reducing that anxiety and changing the neural pathways really comes into play, so that you can do this to say, oh, yes, I like that idea. And what if we took it a step farther? Or what if we changed this one little piece to this? Would that help us get better outcomes? But it's that yes and instead of, and honestly, Haley, you can look at it from this perspective too. It's, we haven't achieved that. We may never achieve that. What if we don't achieve that? And reframing that to, we haven't achieved that yet. Because that 3-letter word can really change your perspective on what's possible versus looking at it from, it's not possible.
Yeah, I love that. Creating a positive future and envisioning what that could look like and continuing on that conversation rather than just shutting it down automatically. So nonprofit leaders, maybe when they're listening to this, they're realizing that they have their own anxieties. And for me personally, I have the luxury of being able to afford a lot of different modalities that can help me with my anxiety, but I know a lot of people can't. And so I do therapy, I do other things that have helped me navigate and change those neural pathways in my brain, but not everyone has access to that. So what are some practical strategies or techniques that you have found most effective in managing anxiety as a leader? And again, how do they go back to creating that healthy work environment?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I will say from a clinical perspective, this is my pharmacy hat here. From a clinical perspective, if you have a diagnosis, a clinical diagnosis of anxiety, it can often take a combination of medication and therapy for the first 6 months to get your brain into a place where it can actually accept the recommendations, and you can actually start to shift those neural pathways and how you see the world, right? But if you are a person who doesn't want to take medication, you can obviously do talk therapy. If that is not available to you or an option to you, there are a lot of other techniques. So I personally like journaling, and that has helped me immensely because I can do my 5 C's journaling method, which is catching the thoughts, challenging them in writing, changing them in writing, And the more we do this practice, the more our brain starts to see the positive over the negative. We're innately wired with negativity bias. Like that goes all the way back to our ancestors, like the cavemen, where we've got this little tiny thing in our brain called the amygdala. And it is just there for the fight or flight mechanism in our brain. So if you think about the fact that you're already set up to think of the negative first before the positive, and you're 2/3 more likely to focus on the negative than the positive, it's really important to take this action on a daily basis. It's not one and done, because our brains are automatically, until we start to actively shift how they're functioning, going to go to the negative first. So that journaling is very similar to meditation. It works the same way as meditation. So if you're not someone who can be still and meditate, journaling is a very powerful tool. The second thing I want to say, and this kind of goes hand in hand with journaling, is to begin a gratitude practice. We talked a little bit about gratitude before. Gratitude is a natural antidepressant. The more grateful you are, the more positive your neural pathways are going to be. So every single day, if you can sit down at the end of the day and write 3 things that you're grateful for. Sometimes you may sit there and think, oh gosh, it's been such a bad day. I don't know that I have anything to be grateful for. Yes, you do. And you can find those 3 things. Look at the scenarios where maybe it was a negative experience, maybe it was a negative conversation, maybe you lost a sale, maybe you didn't get the big grant that you were hoping to get, whatever it is. Whatever that is, there is something positive in that, because maybe if you didn't get that big donation, it's because that person was going to put stipulations on your organization that weren't aligned with your values for your organization. Really evaluate every situation and find, and I'm not saying take hours and hours to do that. It's very quick when you start getting into this practice to find 3 things you're grateful for. It could be the ink pen that you had to fill in the survey that you needed to fill in to get a grant. Who knows? But very simple. So gratitude is huge. Journaling is huge. Breathing is very important. And there are different breathing techniques. I like to just take in slow, deep breaths for 4 counts, hold them for 4 counts, and then exhale for 4 counts. And that just resets my neurological system to be able to come to a place of peace and then think more clearly. Sleep is critical. There's so many people, and especially if you are in this leadership role where you have so much to do, you have so many people to manage, you're always putting out fires, you have to get sleep. We all need 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night. Sleep resets our bodies and it helps our brains function better. So sleep is very important for anxiety. Eating healthy whole foods versus junk. And it's so easy when you're on the go and you're in these positions of leadership to have to eat on the run. Prepare. Plan for a healthy snack along the way. Always have something healthy in your bag that is clean, it's organic, it's healthy, it has nutritional value. Not a nutrition expert, but I will say that eating a healthy, balanced diet makes a significant impact positively on your overall health and well-being, especially from a mental health perspective, because the gut is very synchronized with our brain. The other thing related to that is exercise. We release positive endorphins. So again, we help the positive chemicals be more present than the cortisol levels. So sleep, exercise, diet, all of those are extremely important. And you don't have to do high impact exercising. You can go for a walk. You can take breaks and do squats at your desk, whatever it takes to just move your body gradually throughout the day. And if you can exercise, Pilates, weight training, you don't necessarily have to run a marathon to consider yourself in shape or to be moving your body. It could be as simple as gardening, doing something you love. And another way to help reduce anxiety is to tap into your creativity. I hear so often, oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body. I'm not creative. Yes, you are. We're all born with a creative center in our brain. But because of the fact that we're so busy all the time, we lose sight of that creativity. So it can be something as simple as getting an adult coloring book and just letting yourself escape the real world and get creative. It could be writing. Your journaling practice could become part of your creativity, playing music, taking a cooking class, or just baking in your own kitchen, following a recipe. All of those are examples of creativity that you can tap into to help release those positive endorphins in your brain.
Yes, I love all these ideas. And I just had this exercise around creativity, and I have another person on the podcast that helps in corporate environments unleash creativity. And I was like, what did I like to do as a kid? And now that I have a 4-year-old, I was like, oh, I love to make believe and make up stories and create things, like create stories out of nothing. And so that's one of the ways that I've been playing, is really focusing on, number one, playing with my 4-year-old, and we build on each other's stories, but helping him unleash that. And then it's talking to my inner child as well, that like to create and play all day long. And I love this idea of, I practice all these things. Obviously sleep, I have 3 kids under 4, so we're working on that one. And I do see how it affects my anxiety and how I wake up in the morning. I've also established a daily breath practice. And I always think it's so funny when you like actually pay attention to your breath. When you're really stressed out, you forget to breathe. And that's like our most like normal thing that we need to do to be alive, is to breathe. But I think it's important for people when they're super stressed out and anxious to pay attention to how you're breathing. Is it short? Is it frantic? And then, like you said, take a few mindful deep breaths to bring you back. And I also love like a body scan, or I think it's, you can correct me, but it's 5 things. So using your 5 senses, like what do you taste? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Do you feel the chair beneath you? Do you feel the socks on your feet? So that it brings you back to that present moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I love, Haley, that you brought in, what did you love when you were a child? Because I use that one a lot when people lose sight of their passions too. And creativity and passions go hand in hand. And if you think back to when you were a child, what gave you butterflies in your stomach? Was it going for a bike ride? The butterflies, meaning not anxious butterflies, but those happy butterflies that were just joy filled. You would get excited to do something. And when you can bring that passion and excitement back into your daily life, you start to see things from a more positive perspective. And that kind of brings in gratitude too, right? And if you look at this, it really does all go hand in hand when we incorporate these just tiny steps for self-improvement or self-activation into our day. We really start to live and be more positive, more energetic, and our support for other people shows. And people really do begin to see us as a leader. They want to know what we're doing that makes us positive, and they want to be more like us. They want to follow us. It's pretty inspiring.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that these strategies are accessible. They're things that you can implement and change in your daily life. Obviously, take it step by step, because if you're implementing a new practice, that can cause anxiety all over again. But maybe it's starting to take a walk during lunch, not eating lunch at your desk, taking a walking meeting, making sure that you turn your phone off an hour before bed, and making sure that the first thing, like this morning, I caught myself reading the news right when I woke up, and I was like, nope, I got to put that aside, because that's just going to cause me anxiety. If I'm like, I don't want to be ignorant to what's going on in the world, but I don't need to do it in the first few minutes that I'm waking up to jolt my brain into all these bad things are happening. And just simple things of replacing one meal or a snack with something healthy. And I think this is also something that nonprofit work environments can provide as well. Have healthy snacks available, have water available for your staff, healthy drinks, making sure that you create time to not reach out to your people so that they can take that time for themselves. I think it's something that is internal, but is also an external environment that nonprofit environments need to create more of, because they think that it's going to be more cost to allow people to take time off, but it's actually less cost because those people stick around and they're more productive.
Oh, and you just hit the nail on the head with that statement. Is the healthier people are, the more productivity they have. And we know that people with anxiety have fewer days of productivity. They miss work more frequently. And when they're present, they aren't as efficient. So it is important to do all of these steps and to help support your teams to be able to do these things so that they maintain a healthy status, healthy mindset to be able to do the work that's at hand. Because you're right, it can be very challenging and very, especially if you're a person with empathy, and especially if you're an introvert, like those two things can really drain you at the end of the day when you're working in a nonprofit environment. So I think it's really important to offer this ability to afford time to people so that they can actually have these practices in place. And you can do it collectively. You can do it collectively.
Yeah, have a team meeting around it's like starting your meeting by centering in and grounding into the present before you jump to those outcomes, or asking how people need to feel supported, allowing space for them to voice their fears and needs is so important. So we're touching on environment and teams, and in nonprofits especially, there are seasons, or maybe it's just always anxiety. I always have people be like, Haley, I'm too busy for this. I don't have time for this. And there's also a lot of transition in nonprofits. So how do you approach communication with your team during these periods of transition or heightened anxiety? We're talking this in December, so it's the year-end fundraising crunch. And what role does transparency about these situations play in building trust and resilience in teams? Hey there, podcast family. If you're like me and deeply committed to improving your leadership skills and fostering better connections with your team, I've got something truly amazing to share with you. I'm proud to introduce the EMC Masterclass, something I talk about often as a certified trainer. It's an incredible program developed by the renowned Dr. Lola Gershfeld, an organizational psychologist and corporate emotional connection expert. You might remember her from a podcast episode where she shared invaluable insights into the world of emotional connection. Dr. Gershfeld's EMC Leaders courses are designed for anyone working with people, whether you're a manager, supervisor, team leader, educator, coach, mentor, or a team member. This program is truly for everyone looking to enhance their communication and collaboration skills to raise more revenue for their mission. Now, let me tell you why the EMC Masterclass is a game changer. Dr. Gershfeld's groundbreaking emotional connection process has been integrated into top universities' curriculum and recognized by international organizations like ICF, HRCI, and SHRM. Humans are wired to seek emotional safety, and when we feel safe, we're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. The EMC process is the catalyst for creating that emotional safety within your team. The virtual EMC Masterclass consists of 8 modules with 4 hours of expertly recorded material, 13 quizzes to reinforce your learning, and a workbook filled with activities for offline practice and something I still refer to daily. Ready to become an emotional connection master? Dr. Gershfeld is offering an exclusive detail for our podcast listeners. Use the code LEADWITHHEART to enjoy a generous 10% discount on the EMC Masterclass. Head over to emcleaders.com and enroll in the EMC Masterclass today.
Oh, that's a really good question. I think that first and foremost, we have to accept vulnerability. And when we accept vulnerability for ourselves, it opens our minds to be able to appreciate and accept other people's struggles and challenges too. And it comes back to this positive intelligence where we're not judging, but we're looking at it from the perspective of we're all human beings and we're all innately going to have times of struggles and challenges. And I think doing team activities, and I've seen because of the population that we work with at Face to Face, we do have a focus on diversity because we're serving a population that is different than a lot of the employees, and it's definitely different than a lot of the board members. So we have to have an understanding and an open line of communication with the team members, the board members, our volunteers, to be able to create the same level of respect, the same level or the same efficiency in our messaging. And sometimes it involves just a two-way communication as the, I guess, deal breaker for making this work. And it's getting the feedback from the top down and from the bottom up, because we have to understand what other people are experiencing, feeling, what they see, how they see what we do, how they interpret or even internalize their daily experience with the people they're working to serve, but as well as the people that they're working with. So communication is key. And I think when you have anxiety, communication can be very challenging because you're that fear, right? And especially if you're a people pleaser. But something you can keep in mind when we're talking about that communication is if you are a person with anxiety and if you do have that people pleasing tendency, those people pleasing tendencies, keep in mind that when someone says something to you, if you don't say your honest opinion or your honest perspective, you're hurting that person and you're hurting yourself. And ultimately, you're hurting the person that you're there to serve or people that you're there to serve. Because say someone brings you an idea and they say, we're going to do it this way. But your gut is saying, that is not going to be the best for everyone involved. And here's why. But you don't want to say that because you don't want to hurt their feelings. Then you're setting them up for failure because you know this isn't going to work. So communicating with them, but communicating in a kind, empathetic way is the key. Don't just squash their idea. It goes back to that yes and. So yes, that's a potential. And if we think about it this way, maybe it could be more effective. How does that sound? And open the dialogue. Don't shut someone off by judging their idea and then criticizing it. And don't judge their idea and then be a people pleaser and just appease them by accepting their idea when it's not the best for the organization.
That's so good because you keep that connection, you keep that conversation going, and again, can realize a better outcome together rather than just thinking, this is where I want it to go, this is where I want it to go, like having that commonality, meeting in the middle and finding that solution. I love that how you frame that. So as a last kind of question, leading, especially nonprofit leadership, again, this is only I've worked in, so I know that it can be really challenging. You are mission focused, trying to deliver and solve some of the most horrible issues in the world. And you're coming to face with people who have experienced these. And so naturally, and I hope through this conversation, people will realize, hey, I'm not alone. This becomes more of a normalized topic and conversation, and people do feel psychologically safe to speak up in their environment. So how can you create long-term resilience as a leader? And do you have any other advice for leaders who are listening to this and realize, oh, I'm experiencing this too?
I think first and foremost, it's give yourself empathy, work on self-acceptance, because even if you have anxiety or depression, that doesn't mean you're not normal. If you start to look at mental health challenges in the same way you look at a diagnosis of diabetes or heart disease or cardiovascular disease or an autoimmune disease, you're going to have more acceptance, less judgment. And resiliency is going to come along with that because you're going to be able to look at yourself and say, you know what? I'm worthy. I'm good. This is a hiccup. This is just part of who I am, but it doesn't define me. And I think when you start to see yourself that way, you can start to see other people that way too, and give yourself the grace. And what that really means is that these negative experiences you might have had before because of a mental health challenge doesn't mean you have to sit in a place of shame. You can take these experiences And then you can learn and grow from them instead of silencing yourself or squashing yourself because of that shame. And you can let the shame go. And that's really what I mean when I say give yourself the grace to accept yourself as who you are. But most importantly, take the action to improve. Don't stay stuck and don't use a mental health challenge as an excuse. And I think that's going to help you lead in a way that also empowers your team, your staff, your employees to do the same thing. And you'll have an overall healthier environment every day when you go to work.
Yes, I love that. I love how you brought that full circle to not only, I talk a lot about in my business, like it starts from within. You have to lead well from within. The change starts with you, then your environment, and then the world, the community, the world. And so I love that was brought full circle. And I always love to ask this question towards the end of my podcast before I ask where everyone can find you. What is something that is bringing you joy right now?
Well, we're recording this in December, so Christmas brings me great joy. And I will tell you, the other thing that gives me great joy is outside of my dogs and my kids, my husband, is my gratitude practice. Honestly, I believe so wholeheartedly in that. I think it's transformative. It's life-changing.
Yes, I love that. And yes, these practices have been life-changing for me and just tools that I have in my toolbox that like I know I have the power to come back to. If anything, I can come back to gratitude or breath or go for a walk. Something as simple as that. Like I have these tools in my toolbox to come back to. So where can people find you, Robyn?
The best place to find me is my website, which is therobyngraham.com. I'm Robyn with a Y, and Graham is spelled like the cracker. So it's TheRobyngraham.com. And if you subscribe to my email list, I send out a lot of great information, strategies, and just overall, we focus on mindset, we focus on business, we focus on faith, and my podcast is accessible through the website as well.
Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast today. Again, this conversation is deeply personal, and I took a lot of notes because I know that I need to go back and review it through this lens and these perspectives that you have given. And I am just so grateful and appreciative of you.
Well, I'm honored to have been here. And Haley, if anybody does have questions, I'm pretty much an open book and I love to just talk and share stories. So people can always email me as well at robyn@therobyngraham.com. But I just thank you that you are willing to be vulnerable and share this message, because the more of us that do this, the more we're going to decrease that stigma of mental health challenges, because they don't define us. And I would like to just encourage your listeners to really dive into that belief.
Yes, thank you. If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.